Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar of the European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction on strengthening disaster risk reduction through science and policy, a multi-level approach. It's our pleasure to welcome all of you that have connected either from here in Montenegro or from your home computers. A very pressing topic because with the increasing risk from natural as well as human-made hazards, enhancing disaster resilience requires a very systematic and of course science-based approach that is integrated into policy and practice. Our panel today that seeks to underscore the role of scientific expertise and also collaboration or collaborative efforts in shaping robust disaster risk reduction policies and advice. Building on the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction and also the EU disaster resilience goals, our session will explore, on the one hand, methods on how to effectively translate scientific insights into either actionable policy, but also on highlighting success stories that demonstrate the effective implementation at various governance levels. Therefore, it is my pleasure to welcome a very high-level panel of distinguished colleagues from the European Science and Technology Advisory Group. We have as an opening and keynote speaker Professor Dilanti Amaratunga, head of the Global Disaster Resilience Center from the University of Huddersfield. With me also here in the webinar, we have Dr. Elena Arefyeva. She is a chief researcher of the All-Russian Research Institute for Civil Defense. Then with us is also Dr. Daniela Dibucci. She is a senior geologist with expertise in geohazards and is working in the International Relations and Activities Unit of the Italian Civil Protection Department. Then we welcome also Dr. Jaroslav Mysiak. He is the director of the Risk Assessment and Adaptation Strategies Division, working at the Euro-Mediterranean Center on Climate Change. And last but not least, Dr. Alexander Arzhula. He is head of the Research and Development Department at the Israel National Emergency Management Authority. My sincere welcome to all of you. And with this, I would already start moving into our presentation. Before I move further to Dilanti for her keynote or opening remarks, allow me just a couple of words to introduce the Science and Technology Advisory Group from UNDRR, as this institution is still not familiar to most of us, as we have figured out. So the E-STAG is actually a voluntary group of experts that are either nominated by the different countries or are specific experts in their related field. And therefore, the whole group provides the scientific and technical support to the European and Central Asian countries, especially on the implementation of the Sendai framework for action, as well as other frameworks, and also in collaboration with the European Commission's different initiative. I was putting here on the slide just a few selection of recent contributions that you may find also in the online at the web space also of UNDRR. With this, I already conclude and stop the introduction, and it's my pleasure to hand over now to Dilanti for her opening remarks, and if you maybe can manage already to share your screen.
Thank you very much, Christian. I hope you can see
yes. Perfect.
You can see the screen, can't you? Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I think as Christian sort of said, this topic is quite timely in terms of emphasizing the role of scientific and technical knowledge in policy making. So in that sense, it is my pleasure to sort of set the scene in further emphasizing why we need to concentrate on this area, and also sort of giving some basic background to on the policy perspectives. I think it is fair to say that the research and science is at the heart of Sendai. So the role of science is formalized in the first of the Sendai framework's 4 priority areas, understanding the disaster risk. That is actually where the science play a major role. I'm not saying that science doesn't play a role in other priorities, but this one is actually very, very important. In order for us to get a good understanding about disaster risk, we really need to have science in place. And also it includes unprecedented emphasis on the role of science in understanding and delivering risk reduction. So this has already been emphasized. And also at the same time, the Sendai framework recognizes the fact that this ambition goes beyond the capacity of any one science approach. That is why I suppose this multi-level approach and multidisciplinary approach is extremely important. So just to sort of further emphasize the importance of science in Sendai framework, I'm not going to go through the exact text, but I have actually picked up 3 areas where science has been emphasized fully in Sendai framework. So I'll just cover one. I have identified 3 here. For example, paragraph 23 of Sendai framework talks about policies and practices for disaster risk management should be based on an understanding of disaster risk in all its dimensions of vulnerability, capacity, exposure of persons and assets, hazard characteristics, and the environment. So that itself highlights the importance of science in DRR policy making. So likewise, I have actually quoted 2 other paragraphs, also paragraph 25G and also paragraph 23, which further highlights the importance of science in Sendai. So if you could go into a bit more detail about the priority 1 of Sendai framework. So again, I have highlighted in red some key points in further highlighting the role of science. For example, priority 1 talks about the need to identify research and technology gaps. You can't do that without actually emphasizing on science. And also the systemic risk. We have all faced that with the recent COVID pandemic. So we really need to get a good understanding about how these different types of risk actually interacts and generates cascaded impacts. And also sort of understanding scientific research from the point of view of disaster risk patterns, causes, and effects. And also, in that sense, the need to promote the availability of support towards application of science and technology to decision making. That is extremely important, and I think that actually emphasizes why we all are here. And in doing so, we need to actually strengthen the evidence base of science so that the policymakers have material to refer to in taking their decisions. And at the same time, in disseminating the risk information and also providing guidance on methodologies and standards. So these are actually some of the key areas that I want to put forward in justifying or rationalizing the importance of science in DRR decision making or the policy development. So again, just to sort of highlight, science and technology are accelerants of progress, and they actually create new insights and methods. It solves all problems and establish high standards. But having said that, it is actually fair to sort of say that we need to keep on actually doing new research and new information need to be identified because the risk landscape keep on changing on daily basis. Just to give you some examples about the use of science directly. This document put forward by UNDRR, the hazard information profile, is actually a very good product, an excellent product of where the science has actually played a major role in identifying hazard information profiles. So whereas this document identifies 302 hazards, which is actually categorized across 8 subcategories, as I've actually shown here. So this is actually very much based on very much up-to-date research. And another interesting piece that I want to emphasize is is this common set of hazards that I have already sort of emphasized, and also sort of this the Thames barrier in London. This was actually as a result of very high level research. So as you all know, sort of the Thames barrier is actually is set up across the River Thames, which actually protects the city of London from an event of flooding. So this is actually very much actually based on this is actually a product very much based on research that was developed back in 1984. This is just one example that I want to show the importance of science. So that is actually the emphasis on the importance. So, but if we sort of just take a step back and reflect on the midterm review. As we know, the Sendai midterm review took place last year at the UN General Assembly in New York. So there was sort of quite a few points were emphasized, but I want to highlight where there was emphasis about further need to do scientific research. For example, the midterm review highlighted that a lot of efforts have overly focused on disaster response rather than on the disaster risk reduction angle. That means there need to be more research. And also the midterm review highlighted the lack of quality, interoperable, accessible, and disaggregated data. Again, links to the more scientific knowledge. So I have just highlighted two key points here, which I want to emphasize in terms of promoting science and research in DRR. But of course, there are other points that have indirect link as well. So all in all, I think it is fair to sort of say, even though that there's a lot of work is going on, but there's relatively weaker interaction among research community, industry, and policy making. We really need to be pushing this agenda so that we keep on actually producing new research knowledge and have a very good interaction between the research communities, industries, and the policy making. In that sense, even the membership of this panel is a classic example to demonstrate that combination. So with that, I just want to sort of highlight a few key points in terms of what we can do to promote research science and policy community on DRR initiatives. The first point that I want to emphasize is actually the need to conduct periodic review of knowledge needs. Without that, we do not know what the gaps are. So with that, we can actually come up with what the research gaps and which will actually lead us to do more research. And also, there need to be focus on interlinkages between DRR, sustainable development, and the climate change, because no scientist, no country is in a position to deal with these in isolation. So whatever we do, science, policymaking, everything need to be linked together. And also, we need to actually use a holistic all-hazard approach rather than looking into isolation. For example, it could well be natural hazards, biological hazards, such as COVID-19. So we need to have that holistic approach or the systemic thinking. And also sort of, we need to actually use this evidence-based to support capacity building and to ensure that capacity development for DRR is actually is there for countries to make use of it, particularly the developing world. And also to move on to a few other points that I want to emphasize. The first one is actually the international character of science and technology. No country or no organization can work in isolation, because a lot of DRR problems actually go across country boundaries. So we really need to respect the international character of international research. And also number 6 is actually the scientists and the researchers have to work with policy and practitioners, because again, I come from the research community, but we shouldn't be just doing research on our own and to sort of at the end to go and present it to policymakers, expecting them to absorb the research policies. It doesn't work like that. We need to have them on board from the very beginning of the research process so that they have a say in that process, and they get the feeling that they belong to that process. So that is why I say users must be included in the earlier stages of developing research. That is extremely important. I really want to highlight that point, because I have the use of policymakers in the research process is increasing, but there are still gaps. That is why I want to emphasize that. So in doing so, we can link scientific advice to decision makers. And also at the same time, we need to actually promote the open access procedures for accessing scientific information, so that everybody has the equal access. So just to sort of conclude, what are the opportunities for research and science? For example, I think linking research, education, and action is extremely important. And also, the second point that I want to emphasize is that integrating all hazard stakeholders and disciplines is needed. And in doing so, we need to collaborate regionally and globally. And also the need to facilitate policy dialogue, knowledge sharing, and capacity development, and also at the same time to develop flexible and customizable education programs with open access. These are just a few suggestions that I want to put forward in promoting science and policymaking interface. So I'm sure our panel members will have a kind of a very good discussion in taking some of these points forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Thank you very much, Dilanti, and especially for setting the floor, actually on bringing the role of science and research into the picture. Now we would like to move to our distinguished panel and discuss by having some examples on translating science into policy, where lessons either from Europe or Central Asia are being showcased. And therefore we start with our first colleague from Italy, Daniela Di Bucci. She will give us some insights on the role of hybrid experts in closing the gap between science and policy. Daniela, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Yes. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to describe an experience that we have done in these years in Italy, and we also teach in the Evidence for Policy Summer School organized in the last years by DG ECO. And we start from the idea that within the risk cycle, we have decision makers and scientists, and they provide different contributions to the risk management, as all of us know. And we have also to underline, to emphasize that there are intricate interactions, and this can cause also distortion in the roles that have to be played and in the responsibilities. Because we have two main different points of view that we need to reconcile between scientists and decision makers in our field. The first one is that we can say the scientists frequently model events that occurred in the past, and they use this to understand the dynamic of these events. On the other side, decision makers need to use well-tested models that are able to describe events that will occur in the future. The scientific approach is often probabilistic, as we recognize and appreciate, but from the decision point of view, often a yes or no answer is needed. And also, even if we talk about timeliness, scientists need, of course, a relatively long time for their work because they want to acquire more data, they want to reduce uncertainties. They prefer to wait rather than to be wrong. And this is typical from the scientific point of view. On the other side, decision makers must generally give an immediate response, and they have to balance low occurrence probabilities with envisaged catastrophic consequences. And they have also to balance the scientific information with other kinds of information related to economics, population, politics, and so on. So, if we see the possible steps of an ideal civil protection decision-making process, We have the definition of the acceptable level of risk according to a kind of one policy. We have to evaluate quantitatively the risk in terms of as a function of hazard, vulnerability, exposure, and capacity. We have to identify specific actions that are capable to reduce the risk. We need a cost-benefit evaluation. At the end, we have to adopt the most suitable technical solution in implementing it. These actions can be referred to political and technical decision makers and to scientists. In particular, scientists should deal with the steps 2, quantitative evaluation of risks, and cost-benefit evaluation. Of course, in many cases, the contribution of the actors is cannot be separated. There are some feedback, there is some interaction, and in this occasion, some distortion can happen, especially if some of the decision makers or scientists do not or cannot accomplish their tasks or go beyond their role. In this complicated setting, hybrid experts can enter the field. Who are hybrid experts? Hybrid experts are civil servants who have these characteristics. They have a solid expertise in both research and public administration. So they know the two worlds and understand and can use the language of these two fields. Their expertise is recognized by both the scientific and decision-making community, so they are reliable. And therefore, they are called upon to play an interface role because they are able to link the demands, expectation, and timescales that are often short of the decision makers with the data, information, uncertainties, and timescales longer that are typical of the scientific world. In Italy, we have seen that the way of interacting that is supported by hybrid experts has shown capability to foster positive interaction between the civil protection decision makers and the scientific community. This is a long-lasting tradition since the 70s. And we know that hybrid experts facilitate the interaction between decision makers, political and technical, and national and international scientific institutions for the definition of policies and decisions in disaster risk management and civil protection field. And here you can find also a couple of publications on this. And so to conclude, I can say that a hybrid expert can contribute significantly to speed the translation of scientific information into information to decision makers, promote development of ready-to-use scientific products, better target civil protection funds for applied research and studies that can achieve practical and mature scientific results, promote coordination of scientists, promote coordination of scientific entities. And this is important to work to obtain the results to achieve holistic scientific products, so multi-hazard, multi-dimensional, multi-sector, this complex risk assessment, and also encourage the use of civil protection data. So also civil protection has data, also decision makers have information that can be used to help in the best decision-making process and many other actions. So I hope that we can discuss on this in the future parts of this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniela. Very interesting startup already. So for everyone in the webinar here, if you have any questions, you can already put it in the chat, and we will then take them afterwards in the Q&A session. And now I move further to Alex. The floor is yours to share from your point of view some examples of scientific advice in shaping disaster resilient policies.
Thank you very much, Christian, and thank you very much, dear colleagues and dear participants in the audience. So, you know, the timing for me is quite perfect since I speak after Daniela. I wouldn't dare call myself hybrid expert, but I really try. So let's call it hybrid student. So being a faculty member at the University of Haifa and also having the privilege to be involved in policy circles and civil society initiatives, I strongly believe in building bridges. I think we have be constantly involved in building bridges, global, regional, national, local. So there are so many silos, and I think especially in DRR field, building bridges is one of the main imperatives. I think I would like to stress in this context importance, in my humble opinion, of a bottom-up approach. I think many types of knowledge and many nuances are better understood and naturally generated on the local level. And we have to empower, to enhance the bottom-up rather than top-down approach and empower wide representations of the various stakeholders. And through this approach, we could achieve much more culturally sensitive and representative results. So given the fact that, I would like to be strict on time and if I could wisely use the limited time that Christian kindly allowed us. So I would like to briefly share just one recent example that I have been privileged to be involved on, the emerging cooperation between the Israeli National Knowledge and Research Center in Emergency Readiness and the Ministry of Social Welfare. So many times social welfare stakeholders are not natural, let's call it players in the DRR field, although they should be, because social welfare is so much related to DRR. So I would like to briefly share a few examples of what have been achieved throughout the last year in this emerging cooperation. And this is, really a work in progress. So hopefully more to come. So first of all, central concepts in DRR have been introduced to social welfare community. In addition, social components of resilience have been comprehensively explored, also taking into account aspects related to social work and in other aspects in social sciences. In addition, DRR needs in various communities have been explored, as I mentioned, through bottom-up approach, through community empowerment initiatives, and something that I think is an important direction and could be very promising, also speaking about the long term, DRR issues have been incorporated into the more general Ministry of Social Welfare agenda. So the main goal for the next year is related to conducting specific studies related to DRR needs of specific groups of population and communities, and subsequently developing culturally sensitive intervention programs. I think that more generally speaking, if we will succeed nationally, regionally, globally, locally, if we will succeed in bringing more stakeholders aboard, bringing more resources, more data, more representation, more perspectives, I think we will achieve much higher relevance. And also connecting to the important insights of the previous speakers, I think the practice people need our research to be relevant. If it is relevant, then the sky is the limit. If this is something that, looks vague, So then there are many blocks, many challenges, and then we have a limited attention. So this issue of building bridges and highlighting relevance, I think these are one of the main directions that we should promote individually and collectively. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex, not only for keeping the time, but also for nicely connecting to what Daniela said. And in order to stay within our timeline, I would now just hand over to Elena while I'm sharing your slides.
Christian,
Yes.
share my presentation, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, thank you very much for the opportunities to speak with you and to talk to you about some exercise. In this report, I will try to briefly talk about how the triad of science, technology, and practice is implemented in relation to increasing the resilience of cities to disasters, and how our cities go to resilient cities. Global challenges and threats motivated the international community to develop a methodology for assessing and improving the resilience of cities at the global, regional, and local levels. The global programs for ensuring sustainable development are agenda and for sustainable development and Sendai framework. And our cities are complex, interconnected structures and systems. Cities are constantly changing in all dimensions and states, spatial, temporal, functional, institutional, etc. And scientists around the world are exploring these issues, and our E-STAG group is one of the platform for trying to address these issues. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. 65% of Russia's territory is areas of extreme weather conditions, permafrost zones. And here there is increased risk of the functioning of all life support systems, ensuring the sustainability of the infrastructure becomes a priority. Climate change significantly affects the growth of emergencies caused by natural processes. The following trends are noted in the Russian Federation. In 2023, compared to the average annual number of emergencies caused by natural processes, it increased almost twice. An increase in damage from natural emergencies is noted. In 2023 it amounted to more than 60,000 million, 6 million, millions US dollar. You see in this slide. And next slide, next please. And climate change makes a significant contribution to the growth of damage from natural disasters. Among natural emergencies, the most serious consequences are from hydrological emergencies and strong hurricanes. Therefore, for urbanized areas, for cities, they pose a significant threat. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We have carried out research work to assess the exposure of countries, regional subjects to natural processes with the climate factors. A point assessment was made both for individual natural processes and in combination. A corresponding ranking of the country's territory was carried out and adaptation measures were proposed. We published a monograph and a number of publications were written. Next slide, please. Next slide. The connection between science and technology brought to practical implementation. First of all, this is a hardware and software complex safe city. Complex was realized in many cities of Russia, and this complex is designed to create a comprehensive information system that provides forecasting, monitoring, and prevention of possible threats. Next slide, please. Institute has developed pilot software technology for remote risk assessment, the risk which worked with open data. The methodology uses the INFORM methodology. It's based on open data from official statistical sources. Yeah. Three integral index are considered hazards, vulnerability, and potential of counteraction potential. More than 75, almost 80 indicators. And the next slide, please. The results of index calculations can be presented in diagrams, in the form of cartograms and tables. And this demonstrates the Krasnodar region. And now we, as a pilot project, we use this methodology and software on Respublika Tatarstan. Calculations both for individual risk indicators and for integral risk index. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. About practice. In last 3 years, in Russia was implemented a pilot project, My City Without Dangers. The goal of the pilot project is to identify, demonstrate, and popularize the best domestic practices in the field of reducing risk and reducing of emergency situation. More than 250 municipalities of Russia participated in this pilot project. This pilot project was organized by our Minister of Emergency Situations of Russia. A total of 285 municipalities from 70 regions of Russia took part in the first stage, and more than 80 municipalities passed to the second stage. Next slide, please. As a result, were 16 winners in 2 groups. In 2023 was finished this pilot project, and the final stage of the competition reports the 23 best practice for increasing sustainability. From 12 municipalities were presented. The winner were 60 cities that presented 8 best practice. For example, in this slide, you can see the winners of the competition. The city Kazan, you know about the city. In this city in October was a summit BRICS, and also Volgograd and Novorossiysk, Ulan-Ude, and others. Next slide, please. The final stage of the pilot project without dangers demonstrates the not only the huge cities, but in the little cities such as Koryazma, Arkhangelsk region, and Zverevo and others. And next slide. Next slide, please. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Elena, and also for nicely connecting to the Making Cities Resilient initiative. And with that, Yaroslav, we still have sufficient time for you if you wish also to share your presentation and your point of view on maybe some successful collaboration models between science and their stakeholders.
Thank you very much, Christian. Thank you. So I will basically be speaking about few models of how the science, practice, and policy might work together, and I will highlight why they are so successful and what opportunities they provide. So starting from the solution side, Europe is among the leaders in promoting nature-based solution ecosystem restoration for the disaster risk reduction and climate adaptation, and this is very well aligned with the Sendai framework. So there is a number of projects and a critical mass of research innovation fostering the development of nature-based solution, including in this case how to connect the insurance sector, the financial protection with the disaster risk reduction. And they are these initiatives is looking into different schemes, including how to ensure the ecosystem themselves in order to ensure provision of the services. This initiative has teamed up with a wide number of knowledge networks, so looking at the risk assessment, at the nature-based advocacy, cities and regions, and financial organizations, and they together work towards developing new solutions in innovation labs that might pinpoint how certain schemes might work and how they might contribute to reducing the risk and delivering more on finance. And this is done by organizing a small science practice workshop, but also large-scale festival and festivals of innovation where all the societal partners are invited. It also has a specific feature targeting the citizens, where the citizens might team up, create local group, and develop solutions, how they might transform their local neighborhood into something that is more resilient and where the ecosystem services are fully embedded with the development strategies. So all those opportunities are open for everybody who might be interested, and you might find more information about how to do that. Another initiative which is very important in Europe, and now we are getting more to the analytical part, this is Europe has adopted mission oriented research and innovation. Those are large-scale research and innovation programs that involve the public authorities and other stakeholders in doing the research itself. One of those missions is mission on adaptation to climate change. And this mission is providing funding for the authorities, for the local action groups in order to improve the climate risk assessment and develop transformative adaptation pathway. So one of those funding initiatives is called the Climax project. Climax is disposing also with cascading funds. So it not only involves the authorities to work together and align their risk assessment in order to make them a state of the art and making them up to the challenges that we are facing, but they are equipping the local and regional authorities also with financial resources. So you might apply for that funding, and if you get it, if your case is competitive enough, then you will receive the funding, and you might then join the community of practice, which is also open to those that have not received the funding, but that provides you with practical guidance and offers a platform to discuss local and regional challenges. The final initiative that I wanted to mention is related to how to make the knowledge actionable and used by those that are desperately needing better information on climate-related risk. So we call those knowledge services climate or adaptation or resilience services, and those are basically application and endeavor that bring the knowledge to the level of local communities and all businesses, and are able to inform how the adaptation strategies is adopted by those entities. And one of those initiatives that is looking for spreading and building community on climate services is Climate Europe 2. And it does so by organizing regular festivals, webstivals, webinars, and technical workshop designed to make the climate services useful, usable, and used. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Iago. And yeah, we still have some over 10 minutes now to open to the distinguished audience here. Is there anyone who wants to engage with us here in the webinar? Just feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask a question or remark or comment, or maybe another success story that has not been touched upon yet. We'll give you a few seconds to break the ice. If not, I will come with a burning question that actually occurred now during all the presentations that we have heard, and thanks to all of you once more. You have all nicely shared the relevance of actually multiple disciplines that are relevant in the point of science. So in order to stay up to date in these different disciplines, and also to know how to prioritize and which skills or knowledge areas to focus on, and taking the term that Daniela was mentioning as a hybrid expert. I remember previous years ago there was also the term pracademic, a practitioner with some academic hat as well. So in the end, it needs a common understanding. So what would be strategies that you might see on how to stay actually, or how to bridge over all those different disciplines, no matter if it's from a scientific point of view or from a policymaker point of view? Yeah, who wants to maybe go first? Alex, please.
No problem. I wanted to be patient, but if you approached me,
You unmuted yourself already, so I took it as a
it was yeah,
as a sign.
no problem, no problem. I'm jumping in. So a few very brief points. I think first of all, we have to be humble. I think, not thinking that our specific scientific field is the most important and we know everything. We know some, and we should be very open to cooperating with other scientific disciplines and with other stakeholders. So being humble, I think, is a very important imperative. I think another important element that we should foster is being proactive. We shouldn't expect that if we are practitioners, we should be proactive in approaching various policymakers, scientists, etc. If we are scientists, we should feel a certain obligation, societal and to some extent even moral obligation, to approach the people in the practice community, and not to think that, not doing this in kind of arrogant way. We know everything. We will teach you what to do, but doing this in a collaborative manner. So being humble and being proactive, I think if we will try to practice that, we will do a slightly better job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, Daniela.
Yeah, I would like to add that playing the role of hybrid expert, one point that now we are working with is that to make science, hard science, understandable and usable and used, especially related to the political decision makers level, we are thinking that we need to involve also social sciences side by side with the STEM sciences, because now we have a lot of data analysis, hazard and risk models and scenarios, then when we would like to promote some policies and some decisions, there's a difficulty in reaching political decision makers and the citizens as well. And so we understand, and we are seeking scientists from the social sciences to help us to bridge this last gap, to make not only these people aware, but also conscious that they have to have care about the risks and all disaster risk management in general. So I think that the next step is to put together these two big worlds of science, from the STEM and the social science, to work together.
Thank you very much for stressing the increasing importance of social scientific approaches. While the invitation to the audience is still open to engage or post any question that you might have, I would like to link a follow-up question to the panel, as well as to Dilanti, of course, as well. If we look into the evolving landscape of risks and the need for increased interdisciplinary work as well, what competences would you see now, specifically looking into the science sector? What competences do you see evolving or being most critical in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years ahead? Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think it is again linking with what Daniela already said, Christian. I think this interdisciplinary perspective is extremely important. So I think that the scientists, I'm not saying blue sky research is not important. It really is, because without blue sky research, the disciplines actually do not develop that fast. But having said that, particularly in the disaster field, having that interdisciplinary perspective is extremely important, and Daniel actually emphasized that already. I think we need to actually have a quite an open mind, and should be able to sort of appreciate what everyone is doing. And I suppose having a good understanding about the interdisciplinary perspective is very, very important. For example, I suppose particularly with the systematic risk and the cascading impacts that we had to face during the last several years with COVID, and then the floods, and then the droughts, and then the heat waves, and so on and so forth. So you really need to actually bring in the health experts on board, the historians, the social scientists, and so on and so forth. So everybody needs to be coming around the table to solve this common problem, and to surrender their own expertise, but to look into this the question in a most holistic way. So I think, in my view, that is actually one of the areas that I want to promote among my students who are actually coming through the PhD program at the minute, to have that very broad perspective. But having, you need to actually be an expert in your own field of studies in increasing its validity. But having said that, having that interdisciplinary perspective, those competencies need to be built. I think that is very, very important. And also that is extremely important in bringing sustainable development, DRR, urban studies, and also climate change together. Having that common understanding is extremely important. So I see that as a kind of a very good competency that the next generation of researchers, policymakers, and so on and so forth need to develop, Christian. So I think, that's, of course, there are other points, but that is actually one point that I want to emphasize. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Sounds very straightforward, but I assume, and from personal experience, the practice is for sure has to be a kind of trade-off on some way.
Definitely. That is why I sort of said this. The concept of surrendering your own sort of mindset is very important, and we need to appreciate what everyone is bringing to the table in solving this common problem. So the problem needs to be looked into from the process perspective, rather than breaking it down to compartments. I think when we think about the problem as a process, then I think it will be easier for us to sort of appreciate what every one of us are bringing to the table. Yes.
Jaroslav,
Yeah, just building up on what Dilanti said, I think we really need to develop new capacities and new methods to storytelling our knowledge connected to how the risk in the complex and compound environment might unfold and what they might mean. So that requires really a inter-transdisciplinary knowledge. But in addition to that, we are also facing a severe risk of climate disruption. So what has been mostly discussed recently is Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, the type of tipping points that might be weakened and that might bring a new climate state to the world and especially to Europe. Now, why this risk is concrete and emerging and plausible, as has been demonstrated in the climate studies. We really need to develop a new ways of capturing the social, economic, environmental impact of these, because our equilibrium models are not ready to simulate what will happen and what might happen and how we might prepare for those. So that requires a collaboration across different disciplines, that requires foresight, plausibility checking, that requires ad hoc development of new modeling instrument that show and pave the way that we should follow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jaroslav, for complimenting on that. And also now, in the interest of time, in case if there is no one that has a point to raise, I would just briefly 1-2 sentences, maybe as a closing from all of us, maybe already starting with Jaroslav for this session, and then I will close it.
So do you want me to say the final words
Yeah, if
of
you
this?
just from your point of view, just a few. Yeah.
I think European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction is absolutely a critically important forum, and I'm extremely happy that we, as E-STAG, a European Science and Technology Advisory Group to UNDRR, managed to put this group into this session. We really need to bring the topics that we have been discussing to the global platform on DRR next year in Geneva. And we really need to look into how to improve with our insight and with our lessons learned the implementation roadmap towards achieving the goals of the Sendai framework, but also tackle with the unexpected challenges that have not been envisaged when the framework has been designed.
Thank you, Jaroslav. Elena, anything from some closing words from your side?
With very great pleasure, I listen all of us and the very important problems we discussed today. And first of all, we could work on create the build between fundamental science and the operational decisions, because there are very great gaps between science and practice realized. And we need about this bridge, methodological and technical tools.
Thank you so much, Alex. Last famous words from your side.
Very much, Christian, for this great endeavor. So very briefly, 2 points. One, I think we should foster inclusive connectedness. We should leave no one behind, and this is something that very important to constantly practice. And another thing that also elaborating a little bit on what Yaro has said, I think we should foster our capabilities of coping with uncertainty. We cannot describe it since there is a huge level of uncertainty, but this is absolutely critical for both practitioners and scientists. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Daniela.
Yeah, my comment is a little bit more about policy, because now we are. I emphasize the importance of interaction between UNDRR and our group and the EU and the sea protection mechanism. We have now a new commissioner, so next year we will have a new address for civil protection in Europe. Science is very present in the mandate of our commissioners, so I think that there's room to interact and to collaborate, and it's important that we pursue this, we follow this path and continue working on this. Thank you.
Thank you. So the direction is right. And last but not least, Dilanti, your
I think my fellow panelists actually highlighted some really important points. I suppose just maybe highlight some key points to take as takeaway points from this webinar, and then to put that forward to UNDRR and also sort of European Commission, and also sort of take it from there. Really, like the few points to be highlighted. Appreciate the cultural sensitivity, the interdisciplinary approach, and also sort of what Daniela emphasized about this hybrid experts. I think that's a very, very good good point, and also sort of perhaps I think maybe suggest maybe appreciating and bringing in science into the table in a more structured way. Because, for example, at the minute, there's a lot of analysis that is taking place at UN level based on country reports and things like that. But that needs to be triangulated with the scientific information also. So I think those are some of the points that we might be able to put forward, Christian. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for a very insightful and forward-thinking discussion today. As hybrid experts, each of us sits more or less at the intersection of disciplines, and this offers us, of course, a unique opportunity, but also responsibility to bridge gaps, foster innovation, and address the complex challenges more efficiently. So by combining our diverse skills, we are not only enriching our own fields, but also help create more resilient and adaptable networks that can respond to crises. So let's continue this to champion this collaborative approach, knowing that our collective efforts will shape a more stronger and interconnected future. And with this, I wish you a wonderful evening, and thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, wish you the same, Christian. Thank you so much for having the energy to sort of organize this event.